Hello and welcome to the Postcast with me, Mark Story. I'm here today with Nick Watts from the Racing Post, Brendan Duke, Racing Pundit, and Frank Hickey from Paddy Power. Hello, gents.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Hi there. Well, coming up in part one, we're going to be looking at the RSA chase. And in part two, we'll look ahead to the 4 miler on the Tuesday. We'll start with the RSA chase. And Frank, can you line us up with some prices, please?
Yeah, we have joint favourites with Coney Island and Might Bite are both 3-1. Alpha's are both 7-1. Whisper 8-1. American 9-1. Disco's 10-1. Acapella Bourgeois is 11-1. Bells Hill and Royal Vacation are 12s, and we're 14-1 bar.
Now, Nick, from the way we're looking at it here and the way the market is lined up, a lot of this is about Might Bite. And his run principally on Boxing Day or the day after when he fell at the last. How do you see his form and how do you rate him in this contest?
Yeah, he's a tricky one because I wasn't expecting to see what he did at Kempton or what he would have done had he stood up at the last. I mean, I think on his comeback this season he was beaten at odds on at Foss Lass. And he was a promising horse without looking like he was ever going to win a Grade 1 in the way that he was going to had he not fallen. There's a terrible tumble he took that day. Obviously, he's shown at Doncaster and no ill effects from that. But it's interesting. Cheltenham might not be his ideal track. He's run there 3 times and he scraped home the first time, and then the last 2 times he's been quite well beaten there. And you just wonder if a flat track might suit him best. And I don't know. Sometimes it's something too good to be true. It often is that they say that. And just on the balance of his form, and having seen him a few times, that seemed to be kind of extraordinary what he produced at Kempton compared to his other kind of performances over hurdles and previously over fences. So I think he's one to take on.
Are you interested in Royal Vacation by definition, because Royal Vacation came and won the race at Kempton and has since won a race over a shorter trip at Cheltenham?
Yeah, more so, definitely, because he has shown that winning form at Cheltenham on Trials Day, like you said. So, yeah, he was very well beaten on Boxing Day, or he would have been. But, yeah, the fact that he's been to Cheltenham and done it, if you were kind of swaying between the two, that would definitely put you in Royal Vacation's camp, I think, over Might Bite.
Brendan, what's your take on Might Bite? Were you entranced by that piece of form, or didn't quite pan out at Kempton, or were you looking elsewhere?
Well, a lot like Nick. I mean, it was very hard not to be impressed by it. I mean, he was nearly a fence clear. It was an incredible effort. He just galloped them into submission. But it's the standout piece of form in the RSA, but it's also the standout piece of form in his career. Now he hasn't had that many runs, and he might just be coming to himself. He looks a big unit on the telly, so he might just have taken a bit of time and what have you. But it is, again, as Nick says, it is dangerous to just rate a horse on one run. So he's entitled to be fav, I think, because it's such a standout piece of form. But whether I'd back him, probably not.
Probably not. Frank?
Oh, it's the lay of the week for me. I think, just like that, like
lay
his
of
2
the
runs.
week.
Yeah, I can't have him at Cheltenham. Like, if you were talking about maybe next year's King George, you could probably make a case for him, because his best hurdles run arguably as well was in a good handicap at Kempton last March, where he absolutely destroyed the field off a mark of 138, and then he goes back to that Cato Star Novice chase and puts up another career best at Kempton. So I think he's just a Kempton/flat track horse. I must have watched his video of him running at Cheltenham 10 times, and particularly the novice hurdle win, when it was a bad race when you look at what he's done subsequently, and he just didn't want to know about it when he hit the hill. And it's only in the last 50 yards where it flattens out a little bit, he's run on and collared the winner. Now the winner's run 8 times since, or the second from that day has run 8 times since and hasn't won, and is now down to 117 over hurdles and I think 122 over fences. So that'll tell you what kind of a race it was. he ran a novice chase there behind more of that. Travelled okay to about the turn in, didn't get home, and he ran a handicap hurdle when he went off 5-2 fav. Now he was only beaten 5.5 lengths, but again he travelled really well to the turn in and didn't get home. So I just can see him doing something similar, where he's a horse that probably goes short in the run, but I wouldn't want to have a penny on him coming up that hill.
Is there anything you like in the race, particularly apart from wanting to lay Might Bite?
Well, there's one I love, and I think if you look at our prices relative to the others, you can guess. If Coney Island runs here, I think he's a massive shout. And the reason is like he's progressive. He's young. He's probably a little bit young for this race. That 7-year-olds dominate. He's only 6, but his best run last year was when he stepped up to 3 miles at Punchestown. He was just touched off by Belton in the Grade 1. He was beaten on his chase debut, then went to the Drinmore and was, he just blew me away with the way he travelled and jumped. He was brilliant that day. Went to Leopardstown, got collared late on when he was short price fav by Arduke. But that race has worked out tremendously well with Disco and Arduke going on to finish 1-2 in the Flowgas. I think it's by far the strongest form going to this race. Even Might Bite at Kempton, I just don't think he can replicate that. Why I think Coney Island can replicate his form. The only worry is he's just as likely to end up in the JLT.
Right.
But if he rocked up here, I'd be all over him.
Brendan, any idea where this one, Coney Island, will end up?
I would have said he's more likely to run in the RSA, just based on the depth of the relative depth of the two races. This would look an easier race, and all right, he did get outstayed in Leopardstown, but I mean, having travelled well himself and Disco hooked up a bit from about the second last, and the other horse just ground him down, and he's a relentless stayer, that Arduke. And Coney Island loves, the better the ground, the better he'll be. So, assuming we get Cheltenham spring ground, I wouldn't be that concerned about the trip for him. He'll travel and jump well, and I would go for this race because I think it's an easier race.
Do you fancy his chances?
Oh, definitely. I mean, he has to have a big chance. I mean, he can improve on that Leopardstown run, and as Frank says, well, outside of the Might Bite run, he doesn't probably have to improve much on it at all to beat the rest of them. So yeah, he's got to have a big chance. Yeah.
Nick, are you in the same camp on Coney Island? Are you as entranced by his form over in Ireland?
Yeah, I think if you look into the market leaders on their own, compared to like Might Bite and Alpha Des Obo, who it'd take a leap of faith to back him. We haven't seen him for a while, and he's pulled up when we last saw him. So I never like backing horses on the back of something like that, even if there wasn't a reason for it, which I think there was. Coney Island is very solid, and it's a good point that Brendan made. This year the JLT looks red hot, doesn't it? You got horses like Top Notch, York Hill, Disco. It looks packed with good performers. This, to me, looks much more open, and I think unusually for an RSA, you don't always get a big field in this. I think you might get a big field in it this year with trainers kind of on the fringes, got a fringe candidate, and thinking, well, let's have a go, because as we've already discussed, Might Bite is the favourite for it, and he might have his chinks.
It's interesting what you say about the RSA being probably an easier option, because we've just been speaking to Nicky Henderson, who's told us that Whisper, who's going to go for the JLT, is now going to go to the RSA. So that's going to really, that reflects that sense that the JLT is harder to win than the RSA. Would you think Whisper would have a decent shout here?
I think he'd have a better shout in this than he would the other race, the JLT maybe. The races he's been winning, they haven't quite worked out. Clan des Obo, who earlier in the season looked like he might be a superstar, hasn't quite produced that since. No. He's kind of gone backwards a little bit. So that win doesn't look as good as it maybe once did. But I thought Whisper should always have gone for the RSA, really. I'd been up at Aintree for a couple of years when he's won the 3-mile Grade 1 hurdle up there, and he didn't look short of stamina. So for me, it was always the obvious race for him to go to once Top Notch had emerged from the same stable as a kind of more likely JLT winner. That's not to say that I fancy Whisper particularly. I think he's a bit long in the tooth for, I'd fancy something younger to have the legs on him. I think he's a 9-year-old now. He's been around the block. He's had a few injury problems here and there. Yeah. He'll be doing well to win it, I think. Okay,
an American needs soft ground, but was mightily impressive last month.
Well, this is another reason why this market is kind of wide open, and I'm kind of looking way down the list to look for something at a big price, because American you would think would need soft ground, and Bells Hill is quite high in the market too. And how on earth could you fancy Bells Hill when he's been to Cheltenham twice, run really badly twice, and on the back of a really tired and horrible fall at Leopardstown last time out? I'd draw a line through him straight away. Yeah.
Okay, Brendan, how are you seeing Whisper and the other contenders?
Yeah, again, Whisper, it kind of goes against the grain to back a 9-year-old in this race, but he has festival form, which of course is one of the first things you look for if you're going to back anything at Cheltenham. He wouldn't be for me. I mean, if I was having a bet at the moment, I would back American. Okay. He's 9-1 non-runner, no bet. If he runs, he won't be that, because somehow the ground will have come right for him. I mean, I'm not even convinced that he does need soft ground. He beat Labelle des Obeaux on decent ground in Ascot, but it doesn't actually matter what I think. What matters is what Harry Fry thinks, and he says he wants soft ground. And of all the trainers, Harry Fry is the one who's most likely not to be seduced by Cheltenham. He just will not run his horses unless everything is ideal. He's like Goldilocks. It just needs everything to be perfect. But I mean, if you back him at 9-1, non-runner, no bet. I know it's a bit of a cop-out for me tipping up a horse that probably isn't going to run, but if you back him at 9-1, non-runner, no bet, and something happens where it does rain the night before or something, you're on a good ticket with him. I mean, that was the best jumping performance I thought that any novice put up. Yeah. Altior say aside, but any of the staying novices put up, he just jumped them into submission. It was a relentless display of galloping and jumping.
Can you offer any hope to people who might be sort of still sweet on Alpha des Obeaux or Bell's Hill?
Oh well, I mean, the people who are sweet on Alpha des Obeaux, and I know a lot of them, they won't need any encouragement from me, because they've put all their faith in Mouse Morris as the target trainer of all trainers. I mean, you have to, because it doesn't sound like he just burst a blood vessel. It sounds like a blood vessel almost exploded. It was a very serious bleed. Yeah. I couldn't have him on my mind. I know he has the Cheltenham form, but you would have to think Mouse Morris is an alchemist, which some people do, but he wouldn't be for me. And Bell's Hill, I mean, he only ever disappoints in that Irish Gold Cup day at Leopardstown and Cheltenham, but significantly he's disappointed twice at Cheltenham. I wouldn't give too much encouragement for him.
How about Royal Vacation? Does he interest you?
Yeah, it's. I know. Again, we don't want to read too much into that run, but I mean, he was getting an absolute hiding off Mike Bite. So at that race, the last day in Cheltenham sort of fell apart. There was the horses getting brought down, and the horses didn't jump well. He was very impressive, and it was at the course, but he wouldn't be for me. I think I'd chance Coney Island. Perhaps back him at one of the bookies who aren't non-runner, no bet, take a chance that he runs at the bigger price, and American non-runner, no bet at 9-1. They'd be my two.
Frank, you've already identified your liking for Coney Island. What about some of the others like Alpha des Obeaux and Whisper and American?
Well, you could make a case for Alpha des Obeaux on his best form, but again, it's just a massive worry of such a, as Brendan said, a bad bleed and no run since. Like, if one person can get him back to his peak for this one day, it is Mouse Morris, but like he's nearly the same price and places as Coney Island, and I know which one I'd want. There's probably less risk attached with Coney Island if he runs here. Now, Bren makes a good point too, that the JLT does look far hotter than the RSA, so maybe that will sway Connection's mind. I believe the rumours going around are that Eddie Harty wants to go to the JLT, while I think maybe Barry Garrity wanted to go to the RSA. Whether that's true or not now, I don't know, but that's a rumour I've heard. So maybe this will be one that will be played out late. American, I was looking at him this morning. I was like, oh, he looks nice. But then I went into that Warwick race and had a look at the form. And like, Champers the Nice was stuffed in that handicap at Cheltenham since. Captain Chaos fell at Warwick in the Toton. Chef Derv fell when well beaten at Ascot. Mystica Knight was stuffed at Chepstow last week. So it's not really working out either, as impressive as he was that day. So I just wonder how strong form that is, and whether he's just a bit behind some of the others on form. Royal Vacation, like, he would have been a good second to Mike Bite, perhaps. And what will worry me is how would he go off 12-1 for a handicap of 143 if he was up to winning an RSA? It would just be a question I'd ask. Like, I think if he was, a 150 plus horse, and if the Tizzards thought that, I'd be very surprised if he was allowed to go off 12-1 for a handicap. He's running off 143.
Any big prices you think could surprise Frank?
Well, again, it's difficult to pin down where single farm payment would run, but were he to rock up in this race, like, we're 20-1 non-runner, no bet, I think that's more than fair. He's 2 from 3 at the course. He was joint favourite the last time that Royal Vacation run at the track, where he was travelling really well when he was brought down down the back. He's beaten Arpège de Lane earlier in the year. I think he's one who would outrun a price of 20 to 1 if he showed up, but it's just a question of whether he will. I wouldn't be gone on Whisper. He's probably a bit long in the tooth.
Okay.
Acapella Bourgeois, if it came up soft, would be one I wouldn't put a line through. He's actually our worst result in the book since we went on no bet. We've been just seeing a steady flow of cash since he won at Navan that day.
Okay. Why do you think that is? What's in his profile? Do you think?
Well, I think we were best price straight after the race, 20s. We went 16, 12, and even we were laying into 12s last night. I think it's just the manner in which he won. Now, I think the time men would tell you that he got a very soft lead and it wasn't anything spectacular on the clock. But who's to say he wouldn't get a softish lead here as well? But I think he'll definitely need cutting the ground to be at his best.
Brendan, anything at a bigger price you like?
No, I had a look down through the list, and I'm afraid it looked pretty front end for an open race, granted, but I couldn't see anything outside of the top 7 or 8.
Okay, and Nick?
Yeah, there was one we haven't mentioned, our Kempfer, trained by Charlie Longston. He's come in an unconventional route because he won a handicap last time at Kempton, but he did win it very easily. Beat a horse called Cruise Linen, who's no bad yardstick at all. And the early indications were he's going to go for the Ultima on the first day, but Longston has since said that he's swaying towards the RSA just because of what we've described already, that it's quite open. And he's not a bad horse this, he was placed behind Thistlecrack as a novice hurdler at Aintree in a Grade 1. I think he was 4th or 5th in the Pertemps last season, only beaten a couple of lengths. And he got beaten in a couple of those small field novices earlier in the season. But, he certainly came good last time. And I think if it was, as I think it might be, quite a big field here, and, if there's a bit of pace on, then he's one of those that it wouldn't surprise me at all if he could grab a place. And I think Longston's got the right attitude to this. He said, look, I've had a look at the Ultima. Yeah, you could run in that, but the RSA does look very open, and I think he rates this horse quite highly, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he placed off, a big price. I'm not saying he's going to win out of the ones at the front end. I think Coney Island is a really solid one, but if there's one that could perform above himself, I think he's 148 at the moment. I think he's probably a bit better than that. It might be our Kempfer.
I'll put you on the spot, Nick. What's your 1, 2, 3?
I'd go for Coney Island because I think he will run in this race, and he's by far the most solid at the front. Those at the front end, I think. And yeah, if people wanted a speculative investment, I wouldn't put them off our Kempfer at 16, 20 to 1, whatever he is. I could see him running a big race.
Okay, and 3?
Oh, 3, God. Well, I'd stick Alpha de Zobo in there.
Yeah, come in with a play. What about you, Brendan? 1, 2, 3.
Coney Island might bite American.
Might bite. Okay.
Maybe.
What about Frank?
Oh, Coney Island wins. I wouldn't be surprised if Alpha de Zobo ran well, maybe came second, and between Single Farm Payment and our Kempfer for third.
Well, we've sorted this out. 3 votes for Coney Island, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks, gents.
Let Paddy Power help you get Cheltenham ready with their new and exclusive Cash Card Plus. Get instant access to your winnings at ATMs, online, or even in your local supermarket. 18 plus, gambleaware.co.uk, T&Cs apply.
Frank, can you give us some prices for the National Hunt Chase, which we're now going to analyse?
Yeah, I can indeed. A Genie in a Bottle is 5 to 1 favourite. Ed Wolf is 6 to 1. Beware the Bear is 8 to 1. American, Champers and Ice, Martello Tower, Bells Hill and Big Bad John and Alpha de Zobo 10 to 1. Arpege de Laine 12 to 1. Emerging Force, Baywing, Maldini 14 to 1, and we're 16 to 1 bar.
Nick, this is a race that's often doesn't produce a big price winner, but how do you see it?
I think a Genie in a Bottle could be the right favourite. You go back to a race at Ferry House in December, I think it was. I think he was just touched off on Martello Tower. They were very close together anyway. They had Acapella Bourgeois back in third, and obviously that form looks quite decent now. And just, having seen a Genie in a Bottle a few times and reading the trainer quotes that Noel Meade said about him, he said no distance is far enough for him. So obviously a race like this should suit him very well. There's a few kind of, possibles that I personally fancy. Beware the Bear.
The Henderson horse.
Yeah, Hendo's got no sort of record in this race. I don't think he even runs that many in it. But Beware the Bear. He beat Single Farm Payment at Ascot earlier in the season, which does look good form, and then he followed up at Newbury. I think there's a possible doubt about him coming over. Coming from Lambourne. For the race. If he does turn up, I'd be very, very interested in him. But I don't know. Maybe he just lacks a bit of experience, and that's why Hendo's sitting on the fence a little bit about whether he's going to run.
Yeah, it doesn't sort of have, although it catches your eye, he's won 4 in a row, it doesn't often have the profile of a horse that wins this race that maybe will just improve massively for the 4 mile trip and just maybe hasn't shown on its cards. But I like Beware the Bear too, I agree with you. Brendan, how are you seeing the race?
Yes, well, I've backed a couple of horses, and one of them is Beware the Bear. So it's good news and bad news for you boys. You like him, but he might not run.
No.
Frank had said the same thing to me earlier. I wasn't actually that worried about him because it's the only race he's entered in. But now that I think about it, Henderson does describe him as a bit of a big baby and a national project down the road. And I suppose he hasn't run since December. But he was entered in a race on Betfair Hurdle Day at Newbury, so I'd say physically he's okay. It's whether they're going to he'll run. They always run at Cheltenham. People are mad. It's not like Harry Fry trains them. People are mad to run horses at Cheltenham. So hopefully he runs. I mean, he's gone up £18 for 2 wins. So I mean, the handicapper. I mean, before Ed Wolf ran on Sunday, he was probably the highest rated horse in this race.
Yeah.
Now, the handicapper hasn't taken any chances, but you can definitely see where the £18 comes from because the Aurillac form ties in with that Bellamy, the Picton, that's taken off. The single farm payment looks like really good form. Henderson's mentioned him as a national project down the road. I think he'll relish the trip. He'll like decent ground. I was very surprised to see he was 16-1 in places. I know Paddy Power keeping him on side. That looks a huge price. And I thought maybe if he did run, Nicky might ask Sam Whaley Cohen to ride him. Which I mean, outside of say the Codfather and Derek O'Connor, I mean he's pretty solid, Sam Whaley Cohen. So I'd be happy if he got the ride.
Did you say the Codfather?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the ride on Cause of Causes 2 years ago, or just generally speaking about
just generally? He's different gravy, isn't he? Well, the two of them, himself and Derek O'Connor. I mean, they're definitely worth a few pounds in this race. But Sam's so solid crew.
Solid crew.
I'd be happy if Sam got the ride, and I think he's got a big chance. The Bear.
Okay, Frank. Are you feeling the same about the Bear?
Oh, you'd have to respect him greatly, but I think I wanted the most important thing, but it's very important to look at the jockeys in this race. Like, it is an amateur race, and you wouldn't be going too far wrong looking at the top, like Jamie Codd, Derek O'Connor. It used to be Nina, obviously she's not riding this year. Katie Walsh. Like, if you're even Sam Whaley Cohen, if you're kind of focusing on those jockeys, you wouldn't have been too far wrong the last 6 or 7 years. So I believe Jamie Codd is going to ride a G in the bottle, and that Derek O'Connor is going to back Ed Wolf.
Right.
So that is a massive plus for the two of them and their chances. But Beware the Bear, if Sam Whaley Cohen got the ride and he got the nod to run in the race, I'd be very interested in him, yeah. Like, as Brent said, his form of single farm payment in Aurillac is really working out well, and he looks a horse that could, like, we don't know how good he could be. He could be really good, and you definitely have to consider him at the bigger price. We're keeping him on side at 8-1, but there's double figure readily available, and I wouldn't put you off it at all.
Frank, tell us a bit about Ed Wolf's win the other day.
To be honest, he proved me wrong because I priced up that race and I thought he'd got a harsh handicap mark. I couldn't see him winning off 145. I thought he was only going to get a little bit of a confidence boost and just try and jump around and see where he could finish place. But I was really taken by him. He jumped brilliant. Travelled extremely well and won very easily, and to do that off a mark of 145, you'd imagine when he's reassessed he'd get an Irish mark of somewhere around 152 or 3 at least, which in a normal year for the 4 miler would be good enough to win. The other thing is, it's probably nothing, but this is the first year the race is named after John Thomas McNamara, so you'd imagine JP McManus would be pretty eager to try and win this race if he can. Yeah,
that would be a nice way for the race to go, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and with Derek O'Connor on board, and this is probably going to be his only runner, I can see that. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up going off favourite ahead of a Genie in a bottle.
Would you agree with that, Brendan? How do you feel?
I'd be deeply concerned. I mean, that was a huge run in Naas, and his jumping was a revelation, as Frank said, but I'd be hugely concerned about the ground for him. He's a very exaggerated action. I mean, to a degree, a Genie in a bottle as well. He's quite a shuffly action, but I think he'll cope with it. But Ed Wolf hammers the ground. So I'd say if it comes up normal Cheltenham spring ground, I'd be very worried about him on the ground, and I'd put a line through him.
Would you put a line through Champers on Ice as well?
I thought Champers on Ice might go for the old Ultima, given Connections won it last year. He was a bit slovenly in his jumping the last day in Cheltenham, but I didn't think he got knocked about, and he was running on quite eye-catchingly at the end. My guess is they would suspect that 143 is a mark that they can go to war with. But if he did run here, you'd have to respect him. I mean, again, he's got the festival form, third in the Albert Bartlett last year. I would respect him, but my hunch was he'd go for the Ultima.
Go for the Ultima. Nick, Arpège de Lane was maybe disappointing in the Railstown, but Paul Nicholls said at his stable visit last week that he still thought the horse could have won the race, just a bit quirky. Do you like him in this?
I may have done earlier in the season. I wasn't hugely encouraged by that Reynoldstown run. He seemed to come off it quite early in the race, and he needed to be shunted along just to keep himself interested. And he did run on late in the day, but I would dispute the argument that he looked as though he's ever going to win it. He didn't. I didn't think so. Anyway, I think he has got festival form in the book. He ran very well there last season, and the hope would be that this longer trip, the 4 mile trip, would help him. Just travel a bit kinder than maybe he did at Ascot. He's not for me personally. If Beware the Bear turned up, I would be all over him because for reasons already discussed over Arpège de Lane, I think.
Yeah. And what about Champers on Ice and Ed Wolf?
Well, Champers on Ice, he's got thus far. He's gone a very similar route to Untomport too, who I think ran in exactly the same race at Cheltenham, ran exactly the same kind of race, and then turned up in the Ultima on the first day. It was a real revelation, and the better ground suited him, and he beat Old Holywell very nicely indeed, and. I'd agree with Brendan on that. I think he said he was 143. That's a rating. I think I'd be pitching him into the Ultima off that. I think.
Now, Martello Tower's a horse we saw win the Albert Bartlett 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Do you like his profile for this race?
Well, it's we talk about the ground, and it's unlikely these days that Cheltenham gets very, very soft. If it did happen to, as it did when he won the Albert Bartlett, it was a real gritty performance there. Beat Millshorn in kind of a slow motion finish. You would give him a chance, but it's just a bit of a concern for me that his form seems to have tailed off a little bit on his last 2 starts in Ireland. He's been beaten long distances both times, and I don't know, for a horse that did previous festival winner, he just hasn't quite done it for me ever since then. Even though he's you go back to the Ferry House run in December, that was obviously reads very well, but overall he's just been a bit disappointing for me.
And what about Big Bad John, who won on the same day?
He ruined my Saturday that afternoon. I was all over Flintham, and poor old Flintham. He led all the way, and I thought he'd seen them all off. And then Big Bad John, he lived up to his name, didn't he? And came past him in the shadows of the post.
Yeah, it was the shadow, wasn't it? It was so close.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that display, then you'd say another mile might suit him well. But just reading the trainer quotes, Rebecca Curtis talking about him earlier in the season, saying he wants a big flat track, galloping tracks, and. Cheltenham might be galloping, but it's certainly not flat. No,
so not for you. What about you, Brendan? The likes of Arpège de Lane, Big Bad John, and Martello Tower.
I would be against every one of them. Martello Tower, I've noticed the last couple of times I've seen him, he's developed a habit of getting very warm before his races, and it's possible that he's old before his time. I mean, he's a horse that constantly gives himself hard races. And I think there's a very good possibility he's gone at the game. Arpège de Lane, I don't think he's putting it in at all. I'd be very wary of him going forward. And Big Bad John, I mean, that was a terrible race, a terrible renewal of the Reynoldstown. And he showed a lot of heart, in fairness, but he kicked 3 of the last 4 fences out of the way. He's not going to be able to get away with it in this come. He'll have to jump better. And Nick's point about the flat track is probably a fair one as well. So none of those, I'm afraid.
None of those at all. And you, Frank, do you feel the same way or differently?
Yeah, I'm probably rowing behind Bren here.
We're boiling it down to just 2 or 3 runners here, aren't we? I think, unless something's going to emerge from the pack.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it's looking, isn't it? This race is just like I could see a Genie Bottle, Ed Wolf, and Beware the Bear all shortening if they all get the nod to run, and I could see the rest kind of drifting out and being bigger prices the night before. And like Arpège de Lane, he just jumped too slow at Ascot. Even when it looked like he was going to run on in the straight, he jumped the last two. He spent an eternity in the air, and like I know they're saying 4 miles, like he probably, it won't be as fast, and it might help him a small bit, but that'll worry me that, staying on, if he spends that much time in the air, he won't be able to win even over 4 miles. Martello Tower, like he started the season well, and he ended up beating a G in a bottle at Fairyhouse. But I remember watching it that day, and you got the feeling a G in a bottle was just kind of a national type in the making, and that was over 2.5, and you just felt, the further they go, a G in a bottle would definitely turn the form around with Martello Tower. I'd be pretty confident he will. Champers and Ice would probably go the handicap, won't he?
Yeah.
Because I think this is a theory I was coming up with this morning in the office, was if this had been the aim for him, you'd imagine David Pipe would have been trying to tie down Jamie Codd and pretty early, and I don't think he has, so that would be probably a small negative for him. They wouldn't really interest me.
We've got plenty of negatives in this race. Any positives, Frank, out there in the wilderness of the big prices?
Oh, it's very hard. Like, Flintham jumped so well at Ascot. Like, I don't think he's good enough to win, but like you'd have to give him a squeak at a big price if he did rock up here. Likewise, if the ground it'd have to probably be on the soft side. Might bring something like bay winging. And I was saying this in the office this morning, I got laughed out there. But if Marinero did turn up, like he's a big price of 20 to 1 on run no bet. Like he's run behind Taste Crack at Cheltenham last time. Henry de Bromhead's only had him less than a year. He can really turn around these chasers, and maybe he might be one at a big price. But I'm struggling to find something outside of the top three here.
So what your 1, 2, 3 is what?
A Genie in a Bottle, Beware the Bear, Ed Wolf.
Brendan, anything outside we should be making a note of, or do you feel the same way?
No, I had a small little tickle yesterday on La Belle des Obeaux, who I was very impressed with in Exeter. I thought that was a decent little heat down in Exeter the last day. Jumped well, looks a horse. I mean, you can never tell with these extreme distances, but looks a horse who really relish the trip. And 25 to 1, I'm not really seeing how he's a 25 to 1 shot. Again, I don't know who's going to ride him, which is a huge factor in these races. But you can take a chance at that kind of a price, can't you?
You can. Nick was nodding there about La Belle des Obeaux.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about him. I can't remember off the top of my head if he's got any other entries at the festival, has he, Brendan? Has he got any handicap options, or is this the only one?
He's got the Ultima as an option as well.
Yeah, so that could be a possibility, but I'd take Brendan's point. I'd completely forgotten about him, but he would definitely have a chance, and if he lines up, he wouldn't be a 25 to 1 shot, but I'd stick him in my 3 if that's going to be your next question. Beware the Bear to win for me. I'd stick Label des Obeaux as maybe second, and a Genie in a Bottle third.
And you, Brendan, what's your 1, 2, 3?
Well, I mean, we'll do the combination trikey myself and Nick, because I will go Beware the Bear, a Genie in a Bottle, La Belle des Obeaux, and that'll be a very happy race for me if that happens.
Well, you can just walk out on the Tuesday and just go home, can't you? And just sit back and watch it if that happens.
Yeah, like a bank job, in and out. Yeah. I like the sound of that.
Gone by 5 o'clock on a Tuesday. See you later.
That'll definitely work.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that insight, gents. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Frank. And join us again on Friday for the Weekend Tipping Postcast.
Paddy Power stream all UK and Irish racing live on your mobile, tablet or PC. Unlike some other high street bookies, Paddy Power, you beauty!